Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, writing to strangers on the internet about the sheer audacity of my mother. But here I am, still reeling from what I can only describe as the most humiliating experience of my life. Let me give you some context. My parents were married for 35 years. To the outside world, they seemed like the perfect couple. Deeply devoted, the kind of love people wrote stories about. My father was a hard-working, honest man who loved my mother with every fiber of his being. He wasn't a flashy man, but he was kind, reliable, and deeply committed to his family. My mother, on the other hand, was vibrant and full of life. She had a passion for horses, a love she and my father's best friend, Richard, shared. Richard had been part of our family for as long as I could remember. He and my father had been best friends since childhood, inseparable through thick and thin. When Richard lost his wife in a tragic accident, my parents were the ones who stepped up to help him through his grief. My father, in his ever-loyal nature, refused to let Richard drown in his sorrow. He took him everywhere, family vacations, dinners, even holidays. My mother was supportive, encouraging my father to include Richard so he wouldn't feel alone. And then, slowly, something changed. Richard and my mother began bonding over their shared love for horses. They would go riding together more frequently, leaving my father behind. At first, he thought nothing of it. He trusted both of them implicitly. The affair, when it was finally revealed, shattered my father. He had always believed in loyalty above all else, and to be betrayed by not only his wife, but his best friend, was an unbearable blow. He tried to fight for their marriage, begged my mother to reconsider, but she had already made up her mind. She and Richard were in love. My father had no choice but to divorce her. It destroyed him. For the next few years, he tried to rebuild his life. He focused on himself, attempted to travel and find new hobbies, but the pain was always there, lurking beneath the surface. Then, 4 years after the divorce, he went on a long-awaited holiday. On what was supposed to be a relaxing trip, he suffered a deep cut on his leg. What seemed like a minor injury turned into a nightmare when he developed sepsis. He made it back home, but his body couldn't fight the infection. Within days, he was gone. Losing him was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. My father was my rock, the person who had always been there for me. And just as I was trying to process my grief, my mother announced that she and Richard were getting married. I was stunned. Even after everything, I never expected her to be so brazen about it. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go. But something inside me told me that I needed to be there, to look her in the eyes and see if she felt even the slightest bit of remorse for what she had done. So I traveled miles to attend. It wasn't an easy trip, both financially and emotionally. I had to take time off work, arrange accommodations, and prepare myself mentally to face the woman who had destroyed my father's life. When I arrived at the venue, it was grand, far more extravagant than the wedding she had with my father. It was as if she wanted to make a statement, to erase her past and showcase her new, shiny life with Richard. The ceremony itself was elaborate, as if they were flaunting their relationship in the most ostentatious way possible. I swallowed my resentment and focused on just getting through the event. I kept my head down, avoiding unnecessary conversations, trying to keep my emotions in check. But then came the reception, and that's when the true humiliation began. When I entered the hall, I searched for my seat. I expected to be somewhere near my mother, considering I was her only child. Instead, I found my name at a table tucked away at the farthest corner of the room. The distant family table, filled with relatives I barely knew or hadn't seen in years. Some of them gave me awkward glances, as if they knew exactly what had happened and felt sorry for me, but didn't want to get involved. I was livid. I sat there for a few moments, my mind racing. Was this deliberate? Was she trying to send me a message? After everything I had been through, after the pain and betrayal, this was her final insult? I couldn't let it go. I stood up, marched over to where she was laughing and sipping champagne, and asked her, point blank, if she was trying to humiliate me. At first, she looked flustered, Caught off guard. "It's just a misunderstanding," she stammered. "The seating chart must have been mixed up." But I didn't believe her. I pressed for answers, demanding to know why I had been treated as an afterthought at my own mother's wedding. That's when she started crying. Through her tears, she finally confessed. It wasn't a mistake. It was Richard's condition. He didn't want me there at all. I was a reminder of my father, of what they had done, and he couldn't bear to look at me. The compromise was that I would be seated where he wouldn't have to see me at all. I was disgusted. This man, the very person who had stolen my mother from my father, who had been a guest in our home for decades, who had betrayed the one person who had been his truest friend, was now dictating whether or not I could be present at my own mother's wedding. And worse, she had agreed to it. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and I realized she was no longer the woman I once knew. Any love I had left for her withered away. "You're not worth being called my mother," I told her, my voice steady, despite the fury boiling inside me. "I don't even want to see you again." And then I walked out. Now, she's been calling and texting, telling me that I ruined her wedding day, that I embarrassed her in front of everyone. Other family members have chimed in, saying I should have just ignored the seating arrangement and kept the peace. But how could I? How could I sit there and pretend I didn't just get blatantly disregarded like I was nothing? So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for confronting my mother at her wedding and walking out? OP's mother and Richard are absolute garbage for what they did to OP's father. And now she's doubling down on that betrayal by treating OP like an inconvenience at her wedding? The fact that she admitted Richard didn't even want OP there speaks volumes. She was willing to erase OP just to keep him happy. OP had every right to call her out and leave. Honestly, I would go no contact and let her deal with the mess she made. She chose her new husband over her own child. OP needs to let her live with that choice. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Ah yes, the classic "I destroyed my entire family for a love story and now demand that everyone support me" routine. Your mother and Richard are selfish beyond belief. First, they betrayed your father. Then, she marries the man who helped ruin his life. And now, she essentially tries to erase you because seeing you reminds Richard of his guilt. Well, boo-hoo. Maybe he should have thought of that before stabbing his best friend in the back. You didn't ruin her wedding. She ruined her own life. Good for you for walking away. I can't even imagine how painful this must have been for you. First, you lose your father in the most devastating way, and then your mother treats you like an outsider in her new life. I understand why you went to the wedding. You probably needed closure. And while I think confronting her was warranted, I hope you also take this as a sign to cut ties. You deserve peace, and being around her and Richard will only keep reopening wounds. Not the a-hole, and I hope you find healing away from their toxicity. Not the a-hole, but stop giving your mother chances. She chose Richard over your father. She chose Richard over you. And now, she's crying because her actions have consequences? Spare me. She didn't even try to fight for you to have a place of honor at her wedding. She just gave in to Richard's disgusting request. That tells you everything you need to know. If she wants to be happy with him, let her. Block her number and live your life. You don't need her anymore. My fiancée, Rose, 27 female, and I, 26 male, knew each other since we were babies. Her mom, Sarah, and my mom were best friends for years and had us over a year apart. From childhood, Rose was my best friend. Then, in 6th grade, I asked her to be my girlfriend. Well, technically, we got married in 3rd grade by our friends in recess, but legally. In high school is where stuff went down. My dad was caught having an affair with Sarah's sister. It ended my parents' marriage and also her friendship with Sarah because my mom couldn't look at her without being reminded of my dad's affair. She was so angry with her, even though Sarah never knew about the affair. She cut off her sister too for doing that, but my mom pretty much decided she has to cut her off. They both got into a big fight and never spoke again. Then my mom didn't want me with Rose anymore. Of course, we still dated behind her back anyways because we were rebellious teenagers. We both went to college after, still kept the relationship going, so my mom found out eventually. She didn't want to talk to me for months though, but she came around. My mom can act civil around Rose, but after all these years, she still doesn't want to speak with Sarah. Since we just got engaged and my mom found out Rose's mom is obviously invited, She hasn't stopped asking me to please not allow her to be there, because she doesn't want any reminders of what happened while she's trying to be there happy for me. I got fed up the other day, which ended with me telling her to grow the duck up already and be there for me, or simply don't go, but I'm so tired of hearing it. My mom was speechless. She didn't say anything else, just hung up the phone. But got an earful from her later for acting like being cheated on wasn't a big deal, and blowing up on her for having feelings about it. That's where I'd like to know if I was an a-hole, because she did get hurt by the cheating, but it wasn't ever Sarah's fault, so for her to still act like that after all these years seems so petty to me, and that's why I had told her to grow up. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your mom is acting childish and selfish. Your wedding is your day, not hers. She should be expected to attend and act right. If she can't put her feelings aside for one day and represent herself as mother of the groom, then she should stay home. Not the a-hole. Of course, being cheated on is a big deal, but Sarah didn't do anything wrong. She needs to suck it up and deal with her emotions for your wedding. It is up to her to make a choice. You were probably unnecessarily harsh, but I get why. I can't believe she'd find it okay to suggest not inviting the bride's mom to the wedding. I mean, come on. Sounds like it's been years. Has your mom ever gone to therapy to work through her feelings of what happened? She may want to start on that before the wedding. She was in the wrong to turn Sarah into a casualty of the affair. So let me elaborate. Me, 28 female, and my husband, 30 male, are expecting. It was a huge discussion for us over the last years, and honestly, we made a 180-degree turn, and both went from hell no, we don't want kids, to hell yes, let's make a baby. We did let some people know that we are a bit more positive towards having children, but not that we were actually trying. My sister-in-law, 31 female, wants children from as long as I knew her, but she had a lot of health problems and they were financially not stable, so they both had to live with her husband's, 33 male, parents for some years. 3 years ago, they finally were able to get their own place and started trying. Their luck really has not been on their side, and were not successful. Now they made the decision to try IVF, and had apparently made an appointment that day, Thursday, but didn't tell us. We went to my husband's and sister-in-law's parents that evening, and sister-in-law was also there. We brought mugs with us that evening for everyone, like greatest grandmother, father, and aunt, uncle, to tell the news, and gave everyone their wrapped gift. We had to wait till brother-in-law also arrived. He was on the toilet. So they announced to us that they had the appointment today. We were happy and excited for them, and were hoping for a positive result. Brother-in-law arrives at the table. Everyone opens the gifts that were already on the table. No surprise that we had an announcement. And everyone is shocked and did not see it coming, but were really happy, especially my husband's parents. Everyone except sister-in-law. She's furious and starts crying. She starts shouting that we ruined their big day, that we knew they were trying IVF and wanted to be the first parents of the family, and that we should have been more thoughtful, and this was apparently a very mean thing to do. So I got super upset and angry, and said that I had no clue it was her special day, to get over the fact that she is not going to be the first to be a mother in the family. This is not something that you are entitled to be as the oldest sister. I may have called her an entitled brat and that she is being unreasonable, and should just be happy for us, and now is ruining our announcement that would have otherwise been a very special and heartwarming moment for us. Brother-in-law now joins the screaming party and said that we should have taken their feelings into consideration. So I get this topic was difficult, perhaps for her, and I want to know if I was an a-hole in this situation. Am I the a-hole? Everyone sucks here. She is an a-hole for acting that way. It's understandable that emotions were high for her. Trying and not succeeding for children is a very, very stressful and emotional roller coaster. That probably caused the outburst more than your announcement by itself. You're an a-hole for calling her an entitled brat and escalating the argument. That was unnecessary and mean. Just because she was unreasonable doesn't mean it's okay to hurt her back. You both sound like toddlers the way you handled that, not like adults who will soon be telling toddlers not to behave this way. Yes, the a-hole. You knew they had been trying for 3+ years, and you made a production out of it in front of them. But you could have given them a heads up privately about it, and not hand out gifts to everyone as a big celebration in front of them, which would obviously be painful. And then you call her an entitled brat for getting upset? I mean, I'm not fully on board with her behavior, or saying you ruined their big day. But dang, 3 years takes an emotional toll on you, which you acknowledge you know, but decided to rub it in their faces anyway. It's easier for me to excuse her behavior because she was emotionally caught off guard and upset, while your decision was thought out and just selfish. My husband and I struggled to get pregnant. We went through years of trying and had to do IVF to get pregnant when I was only 28 years old. We got pregnant with twins. Surprise! We only moved one embryo, and we're so excited. Ever since we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law was making ignorant comments to me, saying things like she will get pregnant right away because nothing is wrong with her, that I'm lucky I got to spend money on IVF, and how easy of a process it was for me. It wasn't, but whatever, generally. I let all of these comments go, as I didn't want to argue and cause a scene. Then, I had my girls at 35 weeks before virus was bad. We were lucky they avoided any complications, and we allowed my brother and sister-in-law to visit in the hospital. I could barely even walk after my C-section when they visited. So, they came when my mom was there too, and announced they were pregnant. I was shocked. Everyone was. I faked being thrilled and tried to hold back tears before telling them I was tired and wanted them to leave. It was awkward and the mood was definitely off. I was really upset that I was celebrating my girls' and years-long struggle to become a mom, and they just had to announce that they were pregnant that day. On top of that, they were only 4 weeks along, so it's not like they were planning a cute holiday announcement and wanted to tell me in person. Since then, things haven't been the same with them. We did talk to my brother and sister-in-law, and they pretty much refused to apologize, saying it isn't a big deal. Everyone does it. That I was being too emotional. I've decided to not really spend any extra time with them because I'm hurt and feel like they don't really care for me. When I see her, I'm usually nice, but not over-the-top friendly. I don't go out of my way to see them at all. It's causing a huge strain in the family because my mom thinks she didn't mean it and that I should just forget it and act like nothing happened. But I have a hard time wanting to spend time with them. So, am I the a-hole for not moving on and acting like nothing happened? You are in the hospital after giving birth, and they come in and announce that they are pregnant? Did they also get engaged at your wedding as well? This was a moment meant to celebrate you and your little ones, not her. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. She sounds like a very jealous person, and it's very callous of her to make comments like that when she knows how hard you tried for these babies. Focus on your new family, and if she wants to apologize, she has the chance. Not the a-hole for your feelings, but at some point you have to move on from it. You don't have to like her. She sounds like a crappy person, but you can be civil as long as she is. Don't be alone with her so she can't make those rude comments without witnesses. And you don't have to just suck it up if she's rude. Calmly call her out if she says something uncalled for. Your mom knows what your sister-in-law did was rude, but is trying to keep the peace. Just know that everyone agrees it was rude of sister-in-law, and they all know she is jealous of you. For as long as I can remember, I, 20 male, have been constantly compared to my cousin, Mark, 19 male. I have received state and national honors, get higher grades, got a higher SAT score, everything. Everyone plays off what I have done as worthless light work, while the family essentially worships him. Even my father is guilty of this. It is upsetting. He also has this need to do whatever I am doing. I haven't wanted to be a lawyer since I was a kid, and as soon as that was announced to the family, all of a sudden, Mark also wanted to be one. This past spring, he graduated with a basic bachelor's, as in no minor, at 19. This made the family go crazy with how amazing he is. He decided to take a gap year to get some personal stuff out of the way and study for the LSAT. Albeit at 21, I am graduating next year with a double major and 2 minors from a university's honor program, and I guarantee no one will care. I have met him 2 times and gave him a chance. It may be out of his hands that the family worships him the way they do, and if that is the case, I knew it would be wrong of me to hold it against him. Turns out, he is a barely tolerable person on a good day. Naturally, with how much praise he gets, he is arrogant, self-centered, and thinks he is the most accomplished person to ever exist. I make it my goal to distance myself as much as possible, and I have honestly grown to hate him. Recently, I've started re-looking at what schools, and said out loud, I would never attend the same school as Mark. Whatever school he gets accepted into, I'm not even going to apply to any school in that state. My mother said I was being ridiculous and an a-hole, and said that there was nothing wrong with attending the same school as him. I responded, no way. I don't want to constantly deal with him and worry about him. The last thing I need in law school is Mark trying to one-up me and acting as a family spy. He loves to gossip. She responded, again, that I was being an a-hole, and it would be good to have him as a roommate and study buddy, since to her I am apparently terrible at making friends anyways. I have a lot of friends, she just dislikes them all. I have been as respectful as possible to Mark, and I have never shown my dislike of him to his face. I simply do not need that added stress in law school, and I do not feel like being stepped on as an altar for the family to talk about how great he is. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, but don't even talk about him. You are just making it worse for yourself. Heck, you could do some soul searching and tell your parents you changed your mind about what you want to do. Throw them off the scent. Info diet time. Don't talk about yourself to them. Share news with the friends who actually value your ambitions and goals. Yes, the a-hole, for saying it when no one was pressing you to do it. You are not the a-hole for thinking it, though. But by saying it, you have made things harder for yourself. Also, even though you act like you don't care about him, you are conditioning your life choices to his choices. What if he wants to go to one place you really want to go? You do you, and ignore everything they say about him. Also, don't disclose your parents. Don't make up plans like the one about you building houses on the Amazon. If you don't do it, he might actually decide to do it, and then they will praise him while mocking you. You will never hear the end of it. Not the a-hole. Your family has created this need to compare you and your cousin. It's caused his head to swell and you to dislike them. Instead of inflating the praise for one person at the expense of another, your family should knock it off. They're not thinking about the long-term damage they're doing to your relationships with them. Typing on phone, sorry. My sister-in-law has never been very nice to me, which has never really bothered me because I know it's her issue, not mine. She is quite high-strung and has trouble forming quality relationships with family and friends. Because of this, I tend to not really engage with her because she doesn't add any happiness to my life, and her social problems are not my concern. She is quite rude to her mother and has gotten worse over the years as I have gotten closer with my mother-in-law. Again, not my problem, just speaks to her personality a bit. As fate would have it, we both got pregnant at the same time, both with boys. They had a hard time conceiving and ended up doing IVF with donor eggs after many years of trying. We were very lucky to conceive naturally and a little unexpectedly, and we made an extra effort not to emphasize this too much out of consideration for their difficult journey. We were genuinely happy for them, and I hoped that it would mellow her out and bring us closer. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way, and a big part of the reason was that she insisted on telling me what I could and could not do during my pregnancy. She never seemed to see an issue with publicly bringing it up if I ate or drank or did something she thought I shouldn't. It got so frequent that at one point I just replied with, "I'm quite capable of making that decision for myself," in front of a few other family members. She started crying and ran off, and I found out later that she had complained to her mother that she was upset because she never had the choice to take risks like that. So she was not only saying that I was knowingly putting my baby in harm's way, but also making herself the victim of my inconsiderate response to her unrelenting badgering. I'd like to mention that I'm an academic in the health medicine field, and so I had done some pretty significant research on these topics and definitely knew my baby was not at risk through my choice. The basis for my research was scientific journals, and the basis for her research was Dr. Google. Mother-in-law saw through it, thankfully, and simply comforted her until she calmed down and we continued as normal. That was the last straw for me, and I decided after tolerating years of her passive-aggressive impoliteness that I would stop making an effort to spend time with her. My partner agreed and even commented that we should have made the choice sooner. This has unfortunately coincided with the early years of both our sons, and so the knock-on effect is that they might not be as close growing up. I feel that I've given her so many chances, and I guess the reality is I don't want my son exposed to her toxicity. Am I being an a-hole? Should I put aside my feelings to encourage the boys to grow up close? Not the a-hole. I had to stop all contact with a sibling, and it's sad our kids don't know each other at all, but I am glad my kids aren't exposed to my siblings' toxicity anymore. We tried for 2 years with my eldest child to spend time with my brother, but my sibling and I becoming parents at the same time ramped up his nastiness to the point where it was a game for him. My kids deserve better. Not the a-hole. The baby is too young now to interact with his cousin, and she sounds toxic, so I would avoid visiting. As your children get older, there could be other ways where you have the boys together without you having to always be there. There could be play dates, for instance, perhaps where your mother-in-law takes them both to the park or another fun place. Or with school. I would just see what the situation is in a few years and then decide how you want to proceed. Perhaps you will mellow out over time.